Hey, what's going on? It's Matt, and we are live Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern, March 29th, and we are talking to some people in the restaurant business and accounting world about everything that dropped on Friday, the new stimulus bill. I don't know if there's a name for it. I'll let Scott or Chris answer that. I've been calling it the bailout, but it's stimulus package that was passed, $2 trillion. I guess I should say 2 trillion. Was that Austin Powers? And before we get started, I'll go around and let everybody that's on the screen introduce themselves. We'll start with Mr. Chris Rogers. Chris, if you'll tell us who you are, which I guess I just spoiled the fun there. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Chris Rogers. I'm from Independence, Kentucky, also close enough to Cincinnati that's where we should say I'm from, right? So I'm from Cincinnati. I am an accountant that specializes in the bookkeeping side of the world. So you need your books done. That's what I do. And obviously this time that's around us with the stimulus deal, knowing our books is important if we're going to kind of try to figure out how we're going to proceed with this.
And you mainly deal in the restaurant business, right?
About over 50% of my clients are restaurant. Yep.
Okay, cool. Now we'll go to the other really smart person in the room, Mr. Scott Maloff. Tell us who you are, where you're from, all that good stuff.
I don't know how smart I am. I'm just very experienced. So my name is Scott Maloff of Maloff and Associates CPA. I'm a CPA. I've been practicing for about 30 years. Some restaurant clients, in fact, when I look at my history, a lot of restaurant clients, currently about a handful, but all sorts of different stuff. I've been spending the majority of the last couple of weeks just keeping my clients apprised of the tax law delays, as well as the various emergency stimulus bills. One last week was the EIDL. Don't ask me what it means. I forgot. The CARE Act, Matt, is what you were looking for. The CARE Act encompasses this PPP program or Paycheck Protection Program amongst a vast array of stimulus. I've got about 150 clients. About 50 of them are corporations, partnerships, and then mid to high net worth, mid to high net income individuals.
Cool. Okay. Bottom of the screen, the man with the green screen on, Mr. Brian Picard. Tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Brian Picard, Moore, Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, if you don't know the area. And I own and operate a family-owned barbecue restaurant called Fatty's Smokehouse.
Pretty clear cut. Mr. Jim, Biker Jim from Denver. Tell us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, my name's Jim Pittenger. I sell exotic hot dogs through many, many means. Mostly we cook them and feed them to you. I've got a restaurant near Coors Field in downtown Denver, a couple of locations in Coors Field if we ever get baseball back up and running, mobile carts all over town. So I'm the Denver schlongmonger.
That is the best name yet.
And I can tell you, I can testify to the goodness, the deliciousness he serves up. I had it about 2 years ago when I was out there for the Colorado Restaurant Association show, and it is fabulous.
Thank you.
And Mr. Isaac Hamlin, what's going on?
What's going on, Matt? I'm Isaac Hamlin. I'm the owner of Better Blow Nutrition. We've got a smoothie place, healthy smoothie place in Florence, Kentucky right now. About to be in Cincinnati and other areas, but happy to be here, hoping to learn a little bit about what's going on.
Yep, and I can also attest to what Isaac serves up. I have probably on a bad week 2 of his smoothies, on a great week 4 or 5, and they're always delicious, and they always serve you with a smile and know who you are. So I guess let's talk about this. I think we could start with Chris and then Scott. You guys turn your mics on and give us like an overarching view of what we're looking at. I guess we'll start with Chris, and then you guys chime in on each other, and then maybe go for comments on that, looking at what the bill is. And I'd like to go to our panelists here, Jim, Isaac, and Brian, and find out the questions they have. They sent some questions earlier today, as well as some other people. So Chris, tell us what we've got here, and give us some hope.
So first, I want to touch on something Scott said. This is different from the EIDL, which was the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program that was signed in last week, I guess a week and a half ago. And then you've got this one, which is the CARES Act, which has the PPP program. So key differences there, right, are EIDL is 100% administered by the SBA and is applied for through the SBA. PPP or CARES Act is applied through your bank and overall administered by the SBA and guaranteed by the SBA. What this one provides, right, is effectively economic relief to help provide for payroll costs, rent costs, utility costs, mortgage costs. And it's derived at 2.5 times your average monthly payroll calculated over certain periods, depending if you're a seasonal business versus a traditional, hey, you're open 12 months a year type of business. But the other key component of this, and this is through, I can't remember which one of these law firms that sent out a publication, but effectively one of the nice benefits to the CARES Act is your potential loan amount is the 2.5 times your average monthly payroll plus any EIDL loan that you would have been granted in this time period as well. So there's a nice perk to it where all this can come in and have potential forgiveness options to it, right? It just depends on how we use that money. And I think I'm gonna wait till Scott chimes in, because Scott's got a nice spreadsheet that talks about all this stuff that we can look at that helps us understand what is forgivable and what's not.
Yeah, excellent summary, Chris. I'll just say that there's probably a lot that we know that will demonstrate with a spreadsheet that will walk people through it as far as the loan application amount. And this big piece that got everybody's curiosity, which is the forgiveness piece. But we'll walk through that. I think it'll become much clearer. Matt was getting some pre-questions yesterday and today with respect to the program. I think a lot of the questions will be answered when we walk through the spreadsheet to kind of demo it, because right now it's kind of in everybody's head, a lot of flying information back and forth, people doing Google searches. We will also probably find ourselves saying we don't know the answer to some of these questions, or we will hazard a guess or an estimate as far as, you know, how long it will take, the application process, when the funds will be available, and you know, try to give people a context and parameters for when they go to their bank. I would suggest, before I stop talking, that the most valuable people that you're gonna, if you're gonna apply for this loan, and I would recommend at least applying for it, is that you're gonna want to talk to your banker who specializes in SBA lending. Most of the major banks in our region and across the country have SBA specialists. My guess is they're also spent the last 24 to 48 hours gearing up on handling this application process. If there's a hierarchy in who's at the tip of the sword right now, it's the medical care professionals, and now it's going to be the bankers, because they are going to be inundated with people making applications, asking questions. I've read that it's probably going to take at least a week, if not 2, to get the funds out to people, because that's the application process and approval timeline. Plus, the SBA has 15 days to write regulations, because there's going to be a lot of questions that everybody's going to have as far as, what do I need to submit? You know, what's this forgiveness period? Hopefully, again, when we walk through this worksheet with everybody today, it'll answer a lot of people's questions.
And to that, and there are a few questions I think that came in we could probably answer right off the top here. So Matthew Baum put one in and says, can you get both EIDL and PPP from the CARES Act? So no, not from the CARES Act. They are separate loan programs. You have to apply for EIDL directly with the SBA. So that's one loan program, and then apply separately for a PPP loan or a CARES Act loan with your banker when in the next week, right, when this comes live. They can be then grossed or refinanced. You're refinancing the EIDL loan in the PPP program, and that's a part of this program. So you got to apply for one and then the other. Now, again, as Scott said, regulations still can get written in the next 15 days, and ultimately, you know, you could apply for PPP today and still have to the end of the year to apply for EIDL. And how do those get refinanced? We don't know the answer to that question. But yes, you can apply for both, but they're separate applications. Another question popped up that says, what if I have contractors and not employees because we're concerned about our payroll? Independent contractors, 1099 contractors are actually calculated into that payroll formula for your average payroll. So would not be too concerned about that as long as you can substantiate it. And that's the key is, do you have a contract in place? Did you issue a 1099? Can you show that? And then Catherine asks, do you have to be rejected from an SBA loan before you qualify for a PPP loan? No, you don't. You do not have to apply for EIDL, right? Which I think is that's the question we're asking is, do I have to apply for EIDL first? No, you can go straight to this. And the nice part, again, EIDL, not forgivable. It is a repayable loan. PPP is a forgivable loan. And PPP requires zero collateral for anything under $200,000 and no personal guarantees for anything under $200,000.
Chris, did you mention how they determine the amount for the PPE? Is that a payroll history as well?
Yep. So PPP is payroll history. EIDL is not. EIDL is you have a conversation with the SBA after you've applied. They'll call you and you actually literally get on the phone and they determine what your economic injury is and they'll tell you how much they're going to give you.
Okay. Hey, Matt, can you enable me to share my screen so we can just dive into this worksheet? I think it'll explain a lot to people. And by the way, Matt, I sent this to you on Saturday morning. Certainly feel free to share it with everybody that's on the panel as well as our attendees.
Can you you should be able to hit the share button at the bottom, Scott.
Yep. Let me find it.
Green button, dead center.
Yep, I got it. Okay. So I'm assuming everyone can see this Excel spreadsheet. This was actually shared with me by a client of mine. Again, I've been sharing a lot of information with clients over the course of the last 2 weeks, and he was kind enough to send this. Came across his desk on Friday evening, right as this thing was passing. So how is the loan amount calculated? You take your payroll costs over your average monthly payroll costs incurred for the 1 year period before the loan date, 4/1/19 to 3/31/20. And over here, it lists what's included in that payroll cost: your salary, wages, and commissions, cash tips, payment for vacation, allowance for dismissal or separation, payment required for provisions of group health care benefits, payment of any retirement benefits, payment of state and local taxes assessed on that compensation, i.e. FICA, FUTA, SUTA, and then compensation, as Chris was mentioning, you include your sole proprietor, your vendors that you pay. I'm not sure how that's going to work out with grass cutters and so forth, but probably for, and the other thing I want to point out is this piece right here. Anybody that made over $100,000, their comp is excluded from this calculation. So it's really designed for the rank and file members of your staff, your employees that were working for you during the test period over here, 4/1/19 to 3/31/20. I got a chat message earlier from a gentleman who asked me if they had a shorter period. From what I understand, and Chris, chime in if you know better than me, that you will not be precluded from, doing this calculation if you had less than a 12-month period beginning 4/1/19 to 3/31/20.
That's correct.
Okay.
So in that scenario, then you just use the amount of time that you have within that time.
Yeah.
And 8 or 10 months.
Exactly. You use your average pay for that. Now, and the key also is you had to be in business before January 30th of this year. So if you only have the first 2 months of this year or even February, then that's your average payroll cost that you would go with. But you had to be in business before January 30th.
Right.
A question, Scott, on the last part, the $100,000 part. So if a restaurant has a general manager that made $105,000 in 2019, their income is pulled off of the equation to figure out what they're eligible for?
Well, I'm reading it more carefully, and I think it's their compensation up to $100,000, but anything over that would be excluded from the calculation.
That's correct, Scott.
Okay. So
the other thing, though, is there's a provision to include owners paying this as well, up to $100,000 in that as well. So that's so if you're an LLC taxed as a partnership or a partnership, right? You don't take a a wage, you take either a guaranteed payment or a distribution, there is a provision to include that as well.
So, Chris, on that topic, one of the owners that works it full time in our business actually does draw a salary less than 100,000. Would we still include his salary in that calculation?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yep. Any more questions on the payroll that's included? Great. So payroll costs excluded. Again, we talked about compensation for any employee in excess of the $100,000 annual cap. Taxes imposed or withheld under chapters 21, 22, 24 of the IRS code during the covered period. I'm a CPA. I don't know those code chapters. I should, but I don't. I used to be a code head, but I'm not anymore. I'm a recovering code head. Compensation for any employee whose principal resident is outside of the USA. I'm going to assume that as restaurant owners, most of the panelists and attendees don't have employees outside of the country. Qualified sick or family leave wages for which a credit is allowed under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Chris, you may know more about this one than I do. Talk to some clients. Apparently, there is a credit that is out there for the
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for the time off, if somebody is sick or quarantined, thought to be sick, and you continue to pay them through that period, as the last act allowed for, you'll get a tax credit next year on this. So it's related to that. You would exclude that pay because you're going to get a tax credit next year for the dollar for dollar.
Right.
I have a quick question, fellas, if you don't mind. I've got family members that do some work for me. Like I have a sister who's super talented on web design and stuff like that, and I pay her for the projects that she's done. But so far, it's been all gifts. Should I go ahead and eat the payroll cost on that and switch over for this sake?
I think you would not be able to do anything retroactively, right? So eating the payroll costs, like, so if you said, okay, I'll go ahead and pay you now for that time, it would be outside of the period. That's
right.
The question. So,
but I did pay her. I have record of it being paid. It just wasn't like it wasn't through payroll, so it's under a gift.
Did you send her a 1099 for it?
Yes.
Okay.
then you can include it.
Okay. Beautiful. Thanks, fellas.
I would. Until they tell you otherwise, I would not say no to a 1099 individual.
Yeah. So so before we move, go ahead, Chris, if you had something else.
No, keep going. I was just looking.
That was me. There was discussion about owners being paid, even though I take disbursements. Would I be able to utilize that as
one of the things, Jim, they're going to ask for is copies of your tax returns.
okay, easy.
Corporate, and they may ask for copies depending upon your entity structure, your personal tax returns as well.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know the body of what they're going to be asking for in totality, but I suspect it's going to be a good deal of information.
Yep.
Hey, Scott, the 250 is just there as an example for your spreadsheet, correct?
Correct. Had to start somewhere. So, and again, as Chris said, you can't game the system. Isaac was asking the question. It's a look back period from 4/1/19 through 3/31 of 20. So it'd be tough to rig your payroll to be much higher than it is. But remember, this total payroll cost, the average of it, is then multiplied by a factor of 2.5.
Right.
So your eligible loan amount is $625,000. Now
So
remember
if we broke it down, if Scott, can you change this on the fly real quick in that payroll cost and make it more of like a $25,000 a month average payroll cost? Because I mean, I guess most single restaurants don't have much payroll in the 250,000 range. So go to that blue cell and change that to 25,000.
And by the way, anybody that's on the webinar here, I'll email this spreadsheet. Scott gave it to me, so I'll email it out to everybody once we get done tonight.
Thanks, man.
So that should kind of give you more of a realistic kind of gauge as to where you guys might land in more of an average realm. And not to interrupt here again, the other key factor of this, you have to have less than 500 employees. But if you are a restaurant group and you have multiple locations, so in totality you have, say, 700 employees, you're still eligible provided that per location you have less than 500 employees.
That's
And you don't pay your cooks over 100,000, then you're good.
Well, yeah, well, you can claim up to, you can use.
Oh, I guess that's true.
Quick question. If you haven't filed taxes yet for this year because they extended it to, I think, July, does that matter? I mean,
No.
how are they going to get that information?
It's a look back, right, into last year, so we can use financial statements for that.
Okay.
Payroll records. So if you're, let's use ADP as an example, you get your payroll journal from them. They'll use that as a means to it. And then restaurants also. So it's FTEs, right? And the FTE is a very important thing here when we start talking about loan forgiveness. So your whatever your point of sale system or your clocks timing system is very important to understand what our FTEs are, right? Because an FTE is a full-time equivalent. You might have 1 FTE.
So on that same topic, Chris, and I think I probably know the answer, but I'll ask anyway. My business is just under a year old. Will be a year in April, so I don't have any tax returns. So I'm assuming the same would apply then, because I ran into that problem on my online application. I got stopped when it asked me to upload tax returns, and there was no way around it. I didn't have anything to upload, and there was no way to skip it. So obviously, I need to go speak to a banker. I'm assuming that we can get around that with other financial records.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to have to be workarounds because, I mean,
That's
Scott,
part of the regulations.
so
That's part of the regulations that have yet to be drafted.
right.
So I'll repeat this again if I didn't say it before, and Chris, chime in if you disagree, but I'm going to suggest to all my clients and everybody on this webinar, at least apply.
I agree with that.
Now bear in mind that the forgiveness piece, we're going to jump down to that here in a minute, is for the payroll costs that you incur over the next 2 months once you get the loan proceeds. And what effectively the federal government is doing is giving you money to then give to your employees to keep them hired. They're also enabling you to cover the space that they're going to be working in. I'll avoid the political commentary, but I'll say this. I'm not sure how this reconciles with the whole social distancing thing. What I know about restaurants is it can be close quarters sometimes. But they want you to bring your employees back. They want you to have a place for them to work, i.e. that's why they're allowing you, as part of the forgiveness piece, to cover their payroll, the mortgage interest on your building, the rent, and then the utility expenses. In conversations I've had, it's like, well, do I have to bring everybody back? No, but you have to spend the money on employees and on their shelter and the utilities for running the operation.
So that's a great answer, Scott, and I think it applies to one of the questions I'd written down. So if I do end up reducing the amount of days I'm open over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, I don't lose the forgiveness piece. I just am only going to get forgiven for what I paid in payroll.
Well, this is the part I'm not sure. Chris, go ahead.
So here's the key: is FTEs. Okay, so the covered period is basically application through June 30th, and then we're going to have a look back period to the same period a year ago. If your full-time equivalents drop under what you had a year ago, then what's going to be forgiven is reduced as a percentage of the FTE drop off. So to that question, it's not about how much you pay, it's more about who you're paying, the number of people you're paying, right? Yeah. So if you had, in this case, I had 10 FTEs in the covered period and 12 a year ago, you're going to give up. This is a great example. Almost 17% of the amount that could be reduced. Then that would be amortized over 10 years at 4%.
So let's walk through this loan forgiveness calculation, because I think that's what's getting all the buzz. That's what people are most interested in. So remember, we have qualified for, in our example, $62,500. Chris, I'm going to move this back to a $250,000 monthly payroll because it works. So the forgiveness portion of the loan is going to be comprised of what you spent on payroll for the 2 months, 8 weeks from the time the loan proceeds are made available to you, plus any covered mortgage, interest, rent obligations, or covered utility payments. In our example here, that's $268,000 of total government forgiveness. Now, what Chris was talking about was there is a reduction in this forgiveness total. And it's basically, without going into this highlighted example, they want you to re-employ or employ as many of your former employees as possible and pay them about the same as you did before. Apparently, they're allowing you to have about a 25% haircut before they start digging into your forgiveness. I'm not going to walk through this because this language right here, reduction 1 and reduction 2, it's basically the FTE equivalents that Chris was talking about, as well as the compensation amount that I just mentioned. This will be included. I'm going to resend this to you, Matt, and you can send this out to everybody. But effectively, that's it. I'm going to encourage, and I have encouraged my clients to at least apply. I think if you're interested in this, your first job 1A on Monday is to call your banker and ask for the SBA department. If your banker or bank does not have an SBA department, then there are plenty out there. You can actually go to the SBA website and look up lenders. And I believe they'll send you an email with the lenders in your region. But if you're really interested in this and interested in basically being a conduit for your employees to get money from the government through you, this would be the first job of the day on Monday. And by the way, expect a long line and a wait. I don't know that the bankers are going to be ramped up enough to handle the call volume that they're going to be getting. And they're going to be working a lot in the dark, because what we've went over, they probably know, but it's all brand new. And like all government programs that are rushed together with great heart and great intent, there's always a lot of information that just isn't available because the regulations haven't been written yet. Any questions?
So yes. This is like Black Friday. So tomorrow, like all of us business owners should be at like Huntington Bank with a tent in the front.
Sorta. So here's what I'll say. My neighbor is one of these bankers we want to talk to, and he's with Fifth Third. Fifth Third has a call tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. to start to disseminate the information, right? So to Scott's point, the corporate guys inside the headquarters have been studying this stuff for the last 2 days. The branch people that you're going to be working with aren't going to know anything until their meetings tomorrow morning. So you can call somebody at 8 o'clock in the morning and say, awesome, get in line, you're the first one I'm going to call back. But they don't know the answer yet. It's coming out tomorrow morning.
Are we better off going in person or calling?
Go in person, but you're going to have to make an appointment, at least around Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana. Everything is closed. The lobbies are closed unless you get an appointment.
That's a good point. I forgot that. Okay, let's go through some of these questions real quick in here. I'll get some of the easy ones first. Do we know the interest rate?
Or was it 5?
No. These are 4% or less. They're capped at 4%. And again, under $200,000, no guarantees, no collateral.
Okay, and then let's see.
What's the term? Is it like normally a 15 or 10 year?
10
year. And the first payment is deferred. Chris, check me on this. It's either 6 months or a year.
It can be 6 months to a year.
To a year, okay.
Somebody asked, first, thanks for hosting this. Thanks everybody for being on this. I appreciate it too. There's a personal financial statement required on the EIDL in a partnership situation? Are we able to submit PFS separately so it stays confidential, or is there a personal guarantee on the EIDL?
So a couple things. EIDL, yes, you have to do a personal financial statement. If you're applying directly through the SBA website, which you really can't anymore, they've kind of shut it down and run everything by paper now. You would just need to email it separately, but have the application ID for your loan. So yeah, you could keep it separately if you want to keep it confidential. Is there a personal guarantee on EIDL? Under $25,000, no. Anything over $25,000, yes, and collateral.
I have a question about the EIDL. Actually, 2 questions. One, is the EIDL the same is the disaster relief loan that became available last week. Is that the same loan?
Same thing.
It is the same thing. Okay, cool. And you were able to apply for that. You know, I applied for that last week. I'd also heard that they have an interesting development where if you apply within 3 days, they are going to send you a $10,000 check, regardless of whether or not you received the loan. Are you familiar with that?
I don't know about that. I haven't heard that one.
Yeah.
I'm just going to apply.
Yeah, I listened to the NRA. They did a webinar Friday when these were becoming available, and that was one of the codicils on that loan, which is interesting, and I'd love to see that happen. Because if I applied for that, you know, I will say I don't need that loan, but I'll take the 10 grand and move on to the PPL.
Yeah, I highly doubt they're just going to send out 10 grand, but
It seemed like an interesting thing, but the people from the NRA were pretty positive that was what was going on.
Hey,
by the
Chris.
way,
you
NRA in
want-
this case is the National Restaurant Association, just so we're
Oh,
clear.
sorry, yeah, the guys without the guns, the guys with the knives.
Chris, you want to talk about what you're doing with Matt to account for the spending on this
Hold
thing?
on real quick. I think Jim had a second question.
Okay.
This revolved around unemployment. Now, I've also heard that there was a bill to add $600 a week to everybody's unemployment insurance. Is that also a fact?
That was part of this economic stimulus bill that includes the PPP. So
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
the federal government will now kick in $600 a week to everybody's unemployment.
Which begs the question of, you know, trying to get my employees back because, you know, I mean, most of them are getting paid 60% or 63% of their regular pay. That $600 is going to push them over that pay. And, you know, for me to want to bring them back to get the forgiveness on the loan versus them to want to hang on as long as they can with that. You know, I mean, the question would be, you know, from my end, I can fire them and they'll have to come back, you know, because all of a sudden the unemployment insurance kind of goes moot.
No, the other parts of this economic stimulus bill, the way it's worked, you can fire them, they're still going to get it, both state and federal. So I wouldn't.
Well, that wasn't my intention, you know,
Right.
at all. But you know, that may make it difficult to bring them back in time for that loan forgiveness on the payroll thing. So,
Agreements with your statement there.
pardon me?
I don't have any insights into how you can entice them, Scott. I don't know about you, but it honestly, from a restaurant perspective, it's probably more economically advantageous for a server to stay on unemployment.
Mhm.
Yep.
Let me ask you this though: can you time when you take access of the funds? Like for example, Jim's got a restaurant that's closed right now. There's no dine-in, and let's say dine-in opens up April 16th. And
Unlikely. We've got in Denver, the dine-in restaurants are closed till at least May 11th.
okay,
You know, so bringing them on now, and that's at least May 11th. It may be May 30th. We don't know. This pandemic's an interesting thing. We're not sure when it's going to be over. So, you know, part of my question is if I, you know, apply for this PPL and I receive it, say by April 15th, that gives me, you know, really that gives me until June 15th to get these guys back on board. But, you know, at that point, I don't know if I want to put them on payroll without having a hard open date. You know,
So remember, it's going to take at least 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Mhm.
If you get your loan in tomorrow.
I've already talked to my banker, the SBA specialist. He's already on it. So I'm trying to get to the front.
Did he give you a timeline?
I talked to him on Friday, and this was prior to the president signing the bill. He was working Saturday with the other officers with this bank. So we are due to talk tomorrow.
Again, I'm thinking it's going to take them 2 weeks to process anyone's loan. Again, that's a guess. It's an educated guess, but it'll take them 2 weeks. And then the money the spending period, the covered period that's in this example on here begins the day that you take proceeds or sign the loan agreement.
So Scott, if I were to do this and let's say I sign the loan, I apply for it tomorrow, they approve it, I sign the loan agreement, the money's there. I don't sign the loan agreement till May 1st. Then it starts May 1st to basically July 1st, right?
That's my understanding, Chris.
But the money may not be there on May 1st is the thing. So
Yeah.
That's what I'm wondering about.
Here's the Matt, that's an excellent question. So even if the loan is approved for the full amount, you know, this two and a half, you're not obligated to accept it. You can draw down what you want, and Chris, correct me on this, but I think you can term it for the amount that you just think you're going to need forgiven. Because remember, the portion that isn't forgiven, it's a loan and it's got to be paid back.
And there's no prepayment penalty either. So you might have to pay it back, but you could come June 30th and say, all right, we're good. I'm going to repay everything.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, good point.
So
Good point.
in that same vein, so if we're talking about 2-week time frame, I'm still in open business with employees working, and I'm seeing about a 7, 8, 9% in decrease in revenue week on week the last 3 weeks, and of course a much bigger decrease in margin. Right? We don't build our menus to do 100% to go. So in the meantime, is it a negative if I go take like a 401k loan to bridge the gap, and then I refund myself of that loan when I get reimbursed through a PPE or something of that nature? Or is that a no-no?
That would be something you apply EIDL for. If you did that with the PPP loan, you wouldn't get that portion forgiven.
Okay.
This is before, right?
Right.
Are there any other questions, Matt, from the?
Yeah.
Keep in mind, guys, the key. So I want to go back to Brian. Brian asked a great question, right? I don't have cash today. I can go grab a 401k loan to prop it up. If I get the EIDL loan, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, that can be refinanced as part of the PPP loan and then included in the forgivable amount, right? So Scott's got an example of here of say $250,000, but let's say I got another 60 grand from EIDL and I use those proceeds still towards this same payroll, rent, and utility payments. I can get all of that forgiven, provided obviously I'm exhausting that by June 30th.
Now, what you can't do with the EIDL, unless they've changed it since last week, is if you can borrow from other sources, if you have other lines of credit.
Yeah, you're supposed to go that first. But your 401k would be a protected asset. You wouldn't have to.
Correct.
That is not a number one. It's a, can I go to a bank and get a loan?
Yeah,
now,
I wasn't talking about Brian's 401k. I was just talking about the.
I'm not sharing my 401k with everybody.
Yeah, well, but I'll also say this: they're not really spending the time to find out if you can go get a loan somewhere else. If you applied on the SBA website, they're going through the steps. There's just so much volume. I can't sit here and say, "Hey, Brian, did you go apply at your local bank first?" No, sorry, man. They're just going through it.
On this EIDL portion, do you know if it applies to businesses that don't have employees? And here's why I ask: I'm getting quite a bit of pressure from the business owner that owns the building that I lease. That I've made it very clear to her that I'll pay my employees before I pay rent on April 1st.
You're protected with the last act on that anyway.
I know that portion, but I was trying to give her some guidance as to you need to go apply for the EIDL because you're a business as well. Is that an accurate route for me to push her to?
EIDL is not designed as a payroll program. It is an economic injury, right? So we're all losing revenue as a part of this whole thing, right? So everyone that's on this, if you're a business owner, you're eligible for EIDL.
Okay.
So question in here from Robert says, can you describe the rent obligations and mortgage obligations? If we have an LLC that owns the building and another company that owns the restaurant and pays the rent to the building, how would that work? In your spreadsheet, you have the rent and mortgage obligations.
You want to go, Scott?
I don't know if there's a rule on it, but my guess is to suggest that the regulations will cover that when they are written. Unless you know otherwise, Chris.
I don't know otherwise. What I've heard relatively, I don't have any documentation on this, is if you can only apply for one PPP loan. So I'm not sure if you can apply for one per entity. And the same thing with EIDL. I don't know if you can apply for multiples. So I guess the best answer is I don't know. That's probably a better question for a banker.
Yep. My guess is that if you have a separate legal entity owning the real estate that you're operating the restaurant in, that, you know, whatever the rent was before, what they want to prevent, and they're probably going to write this up, they don't want people jacking up the rent in the covered period or during the covered period. So they're going to look at what the rent payment was. There's got to be a lease agreement in place. They're going to ask for it as part of the documentation for the covered period expenses to get the loan forgiveness amount figured out. So my guess is that those sorts of situations where you have a restaurant, you own the building in a separate entity, yeah, those rents would qualify.
But they're also not going to want you to double dip, because this can be used for mortgage obligations as well. So in that situation, you're double dipping, and I think they're going to find a way to push that out.
And remember, on the mortgage, it's just the interest portion,
True.
not the
Yep.
principal.
Yep.
I saw a couple questions, Matt, around unemployment, and I had one or two, so maybe I can tie some of them together.
Yes, you can unshare your screen if you want. That way we got all of
Okay.
us.
I read something, and I apologize if I misquote, something around if there's a reduction in hours, employees could still go apply for unemployment assistance to bridge that gap. Two questions. A, is that factual? B, if it is, does that impact my uninsurance rates? I don't know how the whole unemployment insurance piece really works. I've been in business less than a year, so it hasn't come up a bunch. So kind of those twofold. A, can they, if I've reduced their hours, can they bridge it through that? And B, does that impact my rates when I go to up my insurance next year?
I can answer part two.
Okay.
Any claim will impact your rates, right? And I have a suspicion that everybody's rates, whether you have a claim or not, are going to get impacted next year.
Yes.
But so yeah, any claim will impact your rate, because if you've had none and you suddenly have one or 100, right, your rate's going to change the following year. Now, can they do that on reduced hours, Scott? I don't know. I'm not like an overall unemployment expert.
It's above my pay grade, really.
Okay.
Somebody says, can you pay employees who stay home, or would you have to lay them off and don't want them to work because the risk is too high?
So I know Scott kind of talked about the use of the funds, right? It's to pay people to pay the place they're at and all this. So let's say, Jim, let's say you're shut down. You're not doing anything right now, correct?
Not doing anything right now.
Right. So this is part of the purpose of the loan, is to still pay your employees as though they were working, right? So yeah, I'm going to pay you to stay home. And that's exactly what it is. And basically, I don't know the overall mindset behind this, but I think some of it is to alleviate the stress on the unemployment system, right? Is go home, I'm going to pay you, and you're not going to file unemployment because you're still on the payroll.
I would agree.
Even though they're already on unemployment. We had this
Right. It's a little late to the party, right?
Prior to these loans becoming available.
Right.
And so, the first thing we tried to do was, supplement these guys somehow. And
Right.
that was going to be through that insurance plan we've been paying for. So it's disheartening to hear that we're going to be responsible for the increase in premiums, especially since it was a government shutdown.
And hopefully, Jim, maybe that's something that some of the verbiage will be written in through a period of time, right? These set dates that maybe we won't get double dipped.
Right.
And keep in mind, from what I've heard, and again, this is just hearsay, I talked to a neighbor of mine who's heavily involved in the local Chamber of Commerce. This is just the first phase or second phase of this thing. Evidently, there's supposed to be, possibly, depending on how long this thing goes, 3 or 4 phases all in.
Yep.
I don't know, Chris, have you heard of that?
I have. I've heard it could be upwards of 5 or 6 trillion in total.
Yeah, that's what I read. I read the same thing today. They already talked about what the next iteration of it is.
Yeah.
People are asking if this is going to be recorded. Yes, this is recorded. It'll be posted tonight once it downloads. So that was a question. Somebody asked, can employees work reduced hours and still get the additional 600 plus the initial unemployment they applied since March 17th?
I think that's what Brian just asked, and I think our answer is we're just really unsure on reduced hours versus unemployed entirely. I don't think you can apply for unemployment if you just have reduced hours, but I don't know that. I've never been through the process.
Yeah, and then Silvano asked a question, and this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, and I think Scott answered it with regards to when you agree to the terms, that you apply tomorrow. He's like, he's got 2 restaurants down in Miami, Florida, and he's on lockdown. You apply tomorrow, you get approved in 2 weeks. You don't have to sign it until, like, if hey, we're not going to open back up till May 4th or May 6th or whatever. You don't have to sign that until you have a clarity of when you're going to do it. Because I think from a restaurant standpoint, like Jim, it would make no sense to take this money now when you're not open for a month, because you don't have those people to come back and do. It'd be better to have a very good clarity on when it's going to open put in place the things then, sign it, get open, funds come a week or two later. Now you're full steam ahead with that money. Am I accurate there, Scott and Chris?
I'm thinking they want you to start taking the money out to pay your employees.
Yeah.
The restaurant's just a conduit from the government to you guys out to the employees so that they can make their rent payments, they can make their house payments, they can make their food payments, they can survive. That's how I look at this thing in a big picture.
And I don't think, Matt, that they're sitting here saying, hey, you can put it on hold. I think honestly, if you said, I'm going to wait a couple weeks, you might have to go through underwriting all over again, reapply. Yeah. So usually these things are timed out where you're going to have to either take it or reapply.
Yeah, as Jim said, it's regrettable that this situation, you've got the unemployment benefit coming into them this way and then possibly this loan money the other way. I'm not sure where they're going to spend it other than on their housing and their food costs. But
here's the other
safety is the no pre-penalty to pay it back, right? So if Jim took the loan now and he held it for 60 days and paid it all back, he's good.
Right. And here's the thing. So Jim says, hey, I'm going to take the loan. My employees are way better off on unemployment, so they're going to stay there. So I'm going to use zero of this money to pay them. Jim, myself, I'm on payroll, so I'm going to pay myself. That probably isn't going to get forgiven because my FTEs are too low. But I should be able to still have some forgivable amount, and I don't know the answer to this yet, on paying my rent and my utilities to keep the building there and keep my landlord happy.
Well, I have a quick question for you. Now, is health insurance included in the forgivable part of the loan?
It is. It's part of the
benefits are calculated in that, yes.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, so question on here. Everybody's asking, is recorded? Yes, recorded. Will this lead people to pay cash to their employees? If you take the loan, that wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work.
It would not work, no.
My staff of 14 are all part-time. Can I still get loan forgiveness with the PPP for mortgage, utilities, etc.?
So yeah, but your part-time workers can too, paying them, right? Because it's FTEs, right? So if 2 people work 20 hours a week, that's 1 FTE.
Oh, okay. So those hours add up. So if you got 4 part-timers at 10 hours, that's 40, that's 1. Okay.
You made a comment when you were looking at the spreadsheet, and I apologize, I got looking at my notes, something around the 25% mark. So for my example, like I opened in April of last year. So my FTEs were significantly higher in April, May, June than they are today, probably double. Just getting more efficient, right? So I'm going to get hurt because of that, or there's going to be some of that in that 25% range. As long as I haven't gone below that, I'll get a fair amount forgiven.
There were 2 reductions. There's the FTE reduction and then the 25% pay reduction. Scott, your spreadsheet's gone now, but is the FTE, look back, you may not know this, I may not know this, is it just on the period or is it on the average FTE for the prior, say 10 months in his case?
Okay. So I can't multitask. Sorry, I'm generating.
There it is. It's average. We got it.
Yeah.
So it's on your average FTEs.
Okay.
So yeah, you're a little bit hurt, right? Because let's say you had 40 and now you're down to 20. So your average is 30. You're going to get dinged a bit there. But then the next component of that is there's a secondary reduction of dropping the wage amount as well.
Okay. So on the EIDL, there's some things that this has trickled into that I'm sure a lot of us are experiencing. Like this month, as we've seen the week-over-week declines, I know I'm looking at like paying sales tax here in a couple weeks or a couple of days is going to be a pretty big strain. Would EIDL cover things like that I've used that money to kind of stay open instead of setting it aside to pay my sales tax for March come April 1st?
EIDL can be used for pretty much any operating expense you want.
Okay.
Versus PPP, again, can be used for any So let me clarify. CARES Act, right? Because that's what we're talking about. CARES Act can be used for anything you want as well. But if you want the loan forgiveness, it's payroll, rent,
right,
mortgage interest.
Yeah, somebody, Mark Vargas, who's got a restaurant in Austin, made a comment, said if my employees don't come back and stay on unemployment, I use the PPP loan to buy a new air conditioner. It turns into a 4% loan basically for equipment. That's pretty accurate.
For 10 years.
Yeah.
Still a pretty good deal in the grand scheme of things.
And then let's see here, going through these questions on here. What is the April 1st rent protection you referenced in the act?
there's a stay effectively on landlords to be able to do any action against people for the next like 60 days. Both
Same with
commercial-
utilities.
And I talked to a couple guys the other day on this, and it's a weird situation because if you're a landlord and you've got 20 people who can't pay their rent, well, you've got obligations, you're in trouble too. But at the same time, a lot of businesses are going to have some bargaining power. I mean, for example, you've got a big restaurant built out, everything. If you were to go away, if that landlord was to play hardball and you were to go away, say in 30 days, they've got a much larger expense to get that property ready for a new company.
Mhm.
And they do giving you a forgiveness.
And,
I talked to somebody.
and at a time that nobody's going to be opening a restaurant.
Yeah. And I told somebody the other day, I'm like, I mean, you got to look at it from both sides. And let's say you're in a situation where you can't pay the rent for 2 months. You go to your landlord and go, hey, it's 10 grand of rent for the next 2 months. I can't make it. What if I can come up with half of it through this system and through some other things? And then you forgive half, or maybe you say my half, you got to forgive half, and my half you spread over the 6 months after I open up. I mean, so it depends on how leveraged that landlord is who can accept that, because they're in the same position everybody else is.
Scott or Chris, have you guys seen anything specific on that? Because I haven't been able to find anything, because I've been trying to talk with my landlord and communicate openly. And like, I know a portion of it goes to paying the building insurance. So I have pushed that up. So she has it, right? But she wants to renegotiate the lease now to add whatever I miss over the next month or two onto the back end. Have you seen, like, are they able to do that or force me into those paths, or like what Matt's saying, should we be?
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
I had the same thing occur. I've got a couple of places, my commissary and my restaurant. And, for me, the commissary, it's kind of a no-brainer. Take the 60 days now, put it onto the back of the loan.
Yep.
Otherwise, I guess you could, with a PPL, pay that rent now and not worry about that. So that's, and I think I'll probably end up doing that anyway, so I can get the loan forgiveness on it. But that's not an uncommon way of pursuing that.
Okay.
And actually, yeah,
The landlord to be able to help you out and still keep you on the hook for another couple of months.
Right.
and your lease obligation never changed, right? All they're saying is we can't enact a eviction or foreclosure proceeding in any type of loan or rent situation right now. But you can restructure that, or they can say, all right, the moratorium's up, it's all due now, right? There's not been a lot of guidance behind that. So
Okay.
they're talking about tacking it on the back end, be like, yeah, I'll tack it on the back end, that's fine.
Okay, so let's see, going through the questions on here. If you guys see the questions, Scott or Chris, you can scroll through, you'll maybe answer them
A lot of
too.
them, so
Yeah, my restaurant has been for sale. Should I lean towards PPL or employee retention tax credit? I'm not in it long term.
I'm going to abstain there. I'm not sure I have a good answer for that one.
What was it? We'll say it again.
My business is actively for sale. Should I apply for this, or I already dismissed it? Let me look to it. Put it in.
Should I apply for it?
That's more of a business question he needs to talk to his advisors about.
Hey, there's a good one here from Mr. Patel. It says, what if I have a PEO service or payroll? Can I qualify for this? Man, I don't know, because effectively you're leasing employees from somebody. My thought on that is probably not, because you don't have an actual payroll and you don't have an independent contractor. But Scott, do you have any opinion on that?
Regulations yet to be issued.
Yeah. So no answer. Sorry about that.
Somebody said, is this for restaurants or retail stores? I think it's for all businesses, right? Anybody,
Any business.
what would cause a business not to qualify?
You weren't in business before January 30th of 2020.
And somebody asked this the other day. I think I know the answer. Personal credit, does that play into this?
Yep, it does actually. So it is a credit. There is a credit component, but it's effectively so loose that I think you could get it if you had I don't know what the lowest credit score possible is, but I think you can probably get it at that.
Okay. Jennifer says, might check with your accountant in lieu of calling a bank. Ours will help us through the process, including SBA application submission and debt forgiveness reporting. And you said something too on the reporting, Chris, that I think Scott liked. We talked about that. You were like, hey, if I was you and you get this $50,000 loan, set up a separate bank account that the only thing that happens with regards to that bank account are items that are going to be forgivable.
Yeah, it just makes the accounting or at least the tracking of it so much easier, right? It's like, hey, everything that came in from that fund went to this account, and everything that was related to using those funds came out of this account. And you'll still have to have your payroll records, your lease agreement, your utility bills to substantiate that you paid these things. But you also then have an account trail that's very easy. Like, here's the statements, guys. There you go.
Yeah, not like Scott yelled at me years back when he would look at my accounts and there's a charge for Better Blend in there and Barley Corns and Walmart. He's like, Matt,
No, that's me now.
it's you now. Let's see here.
Thank you, Chris, by the way. Bless you.
Yeah, and somebody said, if I don't use all the money for payroll, can I give a portion of that back? Yeah, I think that's the part you said early payoff is no big deal.
Right.
Yes, you can prepay.
Okay. We go to the top.
Here's a question. I pay for one of my employees' housing. Is that forgivable if I hire him back? No, unless it's part of his actual wage, right? If it's not part of the W-2 wage, that would not count.
Any programs or grants for starting or opening a new location?
I'm guessing no, not in this.
Okay.
Not as part
That's
of
an
it.
interesting piece, though, because I literally sat with my wife and my brother, the other two owners, and we were talking about, like, when this all blows over, there's going to be a lot of good locations available. There's going to be a lot of food trucks that didn't make it. If I did get an EIDL loan, that's not is that against the rules, you think, to go and if I didn't need a bunch over the next 60 days?
You don't have to substantiate EIDL. You need to substantiate PPP for this, right? So EIDL, like it's disaster loan designed for your business, but if for some reason you're on good footing and you get one of those loans, it's on you, man. That's more of a.
I guess from an overarching standpoint, from a business planning standpoint, why would you open up a business in this economy right now?
Oh, I'm not saying I would, but if in 6
No,
months from now,
But the question that we had from the viewer was, I'm starting a business. I'd hold off, my friend.
Especially if you're opening a restaurant.
I think right now, but I think maybe May, June, July, it might be
Yeah.
prime.
Unless your business is coronavirus vaccine, I would tread carefully with respect
Right
to
now.
opening up any business.
So
there was a good question that popped up from Mark Vargas.
Yep.
I don't know if you saw that. Any thoughts on claiming loss due to shutdown against your insurance company, like a business interruption provision?
Read your
we'll
insurance.
try.
Read your insurance continuation coverage very carefully. It's not covered. Most don't cover it.
Matt and I work out with a guy named Andrew Carnes who specifically said there are riders for health disasters to say, no, we don't cover this. So 99.99% of you don't have insurance that covers this.
yeah, so somebody said I have 4 separate restaurants with separate LLCs. Can I apply for 4 separate loans?
Don't know the answer to that yet. I think that's forthcoming.
That's a banker's question.
Yeah. Rolf, who's got Eureka Pizza out in Arkansas, says I have a corporation that owns my restaurant and I have an LLC that owns my commercial real estate that has the mortgage to be paid and my tenant is not paying rent currently. Can I get a separate loan for each business? Is that the same question? The same thing there? You don't know?
Don't know.
Don't know.
So,
Greg Miller.
second gentleman.
Sorry, Jim?
Yeah, looking on the SBA site, the EIDL loan will offer $10,000 by applying if you need emergency funds right now. And if you do not receive, if you're not approved for the loan, the $10,000 is yours to keep. So recommending, I when I finish up my application, I'm going to ask for 10 grand.
Okay.
Okay.
So was it Greg Miller put a comment in here in our chat during the Obamacare FTE in Ohio was 27 hours. Am I sure it's 40 hours? I'm not sure of anything. I just know in my world an FTE is 40 hours. So that's probably deeper in the details what FTE is, and I think that's a banker question.
I think we're getting to the point. We've been at this for about an hour. A lot of the questions are needing to be addressed with your banker. I liken this whole process and what we did today with everybody here and the panelists to when I go shopping for something I don't know anything about, like cars. I always go online, I Google what I'm looking for, I get informed, so I have the parameters and the variables in mind so that when I go to the showroom, I kind of have a sense of what I'm doing. Same thing here. All we've done today is given you guys a context and the parameters so that when you walk in or call your banker on Monday or Tuesday or next week, you kind of understand how this whole loan process works, what's eligible, what's not, how the forgiveness piece works. And then hopefully the bankers over the next couple of weeks can kind of fill in the blanks, to the questions. They're very good questions. A lot of them, I don't think in the next hour we're going to have a lot of answers to.
Well, what I can do too is I'm going to take all these questions and I'll put them in an email, and I'll figure out which ones are, because there's a lot of duplicates, and I'll send them to Scott and Chris and say, hey, when you guys get time in the next couple of days, send me back what you got here on these 15 questions. And then when I send out the replay, I'll forward those answers back as well.
The other thing I want to touch on, Jennifer Hughes said, hey, you might check with your accountant in lieu of calling your bank. Ours will help through the process, including the SBA application submission and debt forgiveness reporting. I would say every accountant should be doing that with you, right? But obviously, you're gonna have a fee associated with it because it's a service that they're providing. But we know about as much as the bankers know when it comes to answering these questions, and they're going to be the front line because they're in touch with the SBA. So when you say, "Can I do this? Can I do that?" the bank's going to know before the accountants and the lawyers do.
I have a quick question. Catherine Hayes 7 minutes ago asked if payroll taxes are part of the PPP loan for the forgivable part. Excuse me. I read somewhere that it wasn't. Is that true? The taxes still have to be paid?
Say that. Payroll taxes would always have to be paid.
Right, but it's not part of the
I know what you're saying. Okay, so Isaac, there is a deferment on paying payroll taxes through the year, right? So as long as you pay 50% of your 2020 payroll taxes by the end of the year, you can defer payroll taxes until 2022.
That's pretty nice. Okay.
I didn't know that. I'll have to call you about that. What is that again? Say that again.
There is a deferment on paying your payroll taxes for this year now. So if you pay 50% of your total payroll tax liabilities through the end of the year, you get a deferment on the other 50% till 2022.
That's awesome.
Okay. Was that part of the CARES Act?
Yep.
Wow. You've done a lot more reading than I have today, Chris. I appreciate it.
Hey, Matt, before you close out, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get in trouble for it. I see 100+ participants. If some of you are not clients using Matt's program, you're killing yourself. He doesn't pay me to do this. I am a client of his. I have been for 4 months, and I've had great results. But he does wonderful things like this at no charge all the time. He and Doug and his team, no matter what questions I have, whether it's marketing, silly Facebook stuff I don't know how to do, they are there, and they do great stuff like this for us all the time. It is the absolute best money I've spent opening up this restaurant. So do it. Don't wait.
I appreciate that, Brian. I feel like I'm going to start sending him good birthday cards. But if you guys want to email me questions, and I'll get Scott and Chris's information to send to you, because I know they both can help businesses out. I know they both consult. They do an amazing job helping me and helping my clients. I've known Scott for going on 15 years. I've known Chris for about 3 years now. I don't put anybody out in front of my audience I don't trust at a deep level. And same with Isaac and Jim and Brian being on here. I look up to those guys. I know how they operate their lives and their business, and they do a great job. The one thing I will say that I'm going to send more information out on this, but we're in a position unique with my company that we have capacity to help businesses for free, because I haven't touched my staff. I've got extra staff. I want to say extra. I got people that we want to use. I don't want to go anywhere. That over the next 2 weeks, we're going to announce what I'm calling the ROI Experts Restaurant Marketing Bailout Program, where we're going to help restaurants relaunch their business marketing-wise for the week or two before we know they're going to open, and for 60 days after, free of charge, no cost. I've already got a handful of agencies I work with that are coming on board, and it's going to be something we're going to do pretty cool that I think will help restaurants, because it's tough. This is a crazy time. I had a client that emailed right before I got on this and said, Matt, I need to cancel our service. Are you saying to suspend it? We don't have any money right now. I said, dude, don't suspend it. We'll do what we have to do. We're not going to interrupt anything. We won't get paid this month. I'm in the same situation they're in. They got less customers coming in. I got less customers that can pay us. So we're here. If you guys need any help, you can email me, matt@mattplapp.com. In the next week or two, stay tuned. We're going to have the announcement come out. We're going to let restaurants apply to get in that program, because I think it's our duty. We've profited the last 10, 12 years off of working with small businesses. It's our goal to give back to small businesses over this next couple months when things start making a recovery.
Awesome.
Thanks, Matt.
Hey, thank you all. Thank you, Scott. Thank Isaac. Thank you, Jim. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
right. Good luck,
Thanks, Matt.
everyone.
See you soon, man.
Best Jim impersonation. I'm going to grill some ribs in the backyard. If you ever want to get hungry, just follow Jim on Facebook, and he always posts pictures that make you realize that we all need those skills.
Or no skills, one or the other.
See you guys.
See ya.
Hey, Matt. Thank you.